Here on His Space, we like to pray in each segment. And this segment today with Coach Tom and KJ to talk about their nonprofit, Get in the Game. So, Father, we come thankful for an opportunity to sit with you and to honor and praise you for the powerful God that you are. Father, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to do your will, to feed your children as you instructed each of us to do. And Father, today we get an opportunity to grace your presence and do that together. So may the things that we discuss today be for edification of those in your kingdom who we are here to uplift and uphold the principles of your spirituality. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Gentlemen, here we are. Coach Tom, KJ, good to see y'all. Get in the game. I have to tell you that one of your board members, Amanda worked with my son. My son understands what I'm trying to do with my life. He said, you should talk to Amanda. I'm like, for what? But she's involved with something pretty special. So here we are, getting the game. Tom, and I'll start with you. I mean, look, you coach at Wake Forest. You got over 800 wins in your career. Spanning 3 decades, very successful at Omaha. KJ, you played over 134, 24 games for Tom at Wake Forest. You're now a high school coach here in Greensboro, in Winston-Salem, and you teach well. But let's talk a minute about the baseball. Tom recruited you. How'd that happen?
I remember being, at that point, by the time Tom was recruiting me, I remember feeling like I was a good player, but I hadn't had a D1 school that was on my list of schools I wanted to go to. It was the ACC and SEC schools. And I started to get some trickle in, and we made this list of, is the coach, someone we like? Check. Is the location good? Check. Is the academics good? Check. So we had that list that we carried around with us by the time we got to the end of the summer. And when we ended up talking to Walt and we talked to our other guys recruiting, we went to it and, we did our background check and your location is in the South. We want to stay, reasonably close. Check. Coach, then we did our research and we kind of looked at Coach's background and we were like, all right, this is a guy that's been around a little bit, been around the game a little bit, and what he did in New Orleans to help them complete their season during Katrina was an immediate check for us. And obviously Wake Forest is a top 25 school, so check. So that made our list. And that obviously got our interest going. And then as soon as we went to our visit and we saw Walt and we saw the campus and we met Coach, and I just got the feel that one, he was telling me the truth. Two, he was going to allow me the chance to play if I was a good enough player. And that was enough to really, make my top 10. And as I continued to talk to Coach, I kind of felt like, that was a coach that was going to have my back, whether it was on the field or, just simply making me a better person. All that kind of ended up coming true.
Well, Tom, so we look at KJ as a player. He has some skills. We talk about skills a little bit, but there must have been something about it. Because here you guys are now. Something that God had birthed in you. Something you saw in him. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so like you said, David, the tools were off the charts. I mean, he was a 5-tool player. He had just won the Bo Jackson Skills Challenge down in Florida. So he kind of burst onto the scene nationally. We were a new coaching staff trying to build a program that had been struggling the 5 or so years before we got there. And, we wanted to build our program around this guy right here. He was the kind of guy that come in and change the landscape of your whole program for the next decade. And, but you talked about the personal side of it. What struck me right away about Kevin was his quiet confidence and his thoughtfulness. He was very, very introspective. He was a young man who sat across, he listened to what you had to say. He thought about it before he responded. He wasn't your typical 18-year-old kid who's just kind of flying by the seat of his pants. He was somebody that took the recruiting process academics, and every part of his life seriously. And that doesn't happen very often. That was impressive.
So here we are, 2010 you recruited, 2011 things changed. Freshman, and life hit. The disease is called ANCA, autoimmune. The reason, one thing that caught me as I was studying, I have an autoimmune disorder as well. I know that it changes your life. In this case, you needed to keep it, right? You needed it. So the story is well chronicled. This is not why we're here today. But Coach decides to give it. I'm going to let you guys expound on that a minute, because we're not here for that, but it's the story. Coach gives you a kidney, and why, what, how did that happen?
So it started Kevin's senior year in high school. We were worried about losing him into the draft. We felt like that was the biggest hurdle we had. Getting Kevin to campus was the major league draft, because he was a potential first-round pick out of high school. And there were scouts in there to see him by the dozens for all his games early in the year. And I got a call from a scout friend of mine who said, hey, what's going on with KJ? He doesn't look quite right. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, he's kind of not playing with the same energy. Looks like maybe he's lost a little bit of weight. And so I called Kevin's dad, and Kevin's dad was like, yeah, Kevin's got a virus, and he's going to be okay. Everything's fine. And kind of fast forward 3-4 weeks, we're getting more calls. Is everything okay with Kevin? Because now he starts missing games. And now, as we come to find out, it's a lot more serious. So I had a conversation with Kevin's agent at the time, Joel Wolf, and Joel was with CAA at the time. And I called Joel and I said, Joel, what do you got? Like, what's going on here? And he said, well, we're getting him to a specialist. We're going to get him to Atlanta to see a doctor, because at that time he had just been seeing the family doctor back in Vienna, and they didn't really know what was going on. So then we find out shortly after that he's got ANCA vasculitis, and this ANCA bacteria has attacked his kidneys, and his kidney function at the time was down under 20%, and he was going to have to start dialysis a couple times a week. And, I didn't know what that really meant. And I didn't really know the scope of it until he got to campus. And when he got to campus, he was 40, 45 pounds lighter, totally different, skin shade. Like had he not been with his parents, I probably would have walked right past him and not known who he was, because he was sick. He was a hospital patient, what he was. And then when I sat in that doctor's office, and the doctor, he transferred from Emory to Wake Baptist, and met with Dr. Friedman, and Dr. Friedman started to walk through everything that he had been through and what he was about to go through, and the fact that he needed a kidney. I was blown away. First of all, I was blown away that he was even on campus, because somebody that had gone through what he had gone through, like, people talk about my courage in this story. This guy's the courage of the story, because he's the one that showed up on campus. He's the one that fought the fight. And so I'm sitting there listening to everything he's gone through. And the first thing the doc says is, well, we need to find you a kidney. And that person's got to have the same blood type as you. And, you're O positive. And I was like, I'm O positive. And I just remember we took a tour of the facility after that meeting. And I just turned to Kevin's dad and I was like, hey, I'll get tested right now. And quite honestly, David, people maybe believe this, maybe they don't. In that moment, I knew it was going to be me. I knew. There was not a doubt in my mind that God.
Say that to me, Tom. I really, at this point in my life, I understand the moment. I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This was your moment.
We were meant to be together in that room together at that time. That God put us in each other's path to make this happen.
One last baseball question I got to ask.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, coach, give me back to playing. You missed that bunt sign. You come back to the dugout. A little bit different conversation now.
Oh yeah, I mean, as soon as we started playing games, and even in the fall, it was full on competition. And I know Coach wants to win, and I want to be. In my mind, I'm the still player that I thought should have gotten drafted in the first round. Had the sickness not happened. So part of that probably was a little not helpful for my career. I thought I was the Kevin Jordan that was the Bo Jackson. But that was in high school. But what I did know is that I went through what I went through, and if I could go through that, then the morning workouts are not going to be an issue. Say I go 0 for 4, I'm still going to come back and come with the same confidence and same mentality going forward, because I know what I've been through, and I think I still take that today. I know what I've been through, right, and I know I can kind of push through and get through whatever obstacle. So getting through a baseball season, even if I miss that bunt sign right, you have a runner on third, I didn't score him. Yeah. I can take a deep breath and say, all right.
It changed you as a person as well. It changed you as a coach.
Without question.
Yeah. So let's fast forward then to okay, so God's had that moment. Because this thing was well chronicled of our media. So that moment's happened. And I look at it as, what's next? Here we go. You guys co-founded something called Getting the Game. Wow, Tom.
Well, again, for the same exact reason that I wanted to be the guy who gave Kevin my kidney, because I think we all face these moments in our life where we have a choice. We can sit on the sidelines or we can get in the game. And
I love that.
COVID was happening. It was the middle of COVID, and George Floyd had just been murdered, and the world's exploding around us, and it's polarizing, and it's uncertain, and people are frightened. And I was talking to Kevin. I called all of my former players of color in that moment just to check on them, make sure they're doing okay. How's your family? Can I help? You want somebody to talk to? You want to yell at somebody? Like, I'm here. Like, I can't understand what you're going through, but I'm here. And talking to Kevin, and we just got into a conversation about what Kevin wanted to do next. He was talking about wanting to be a school teacher and all these different things. And I don't know why, but in that moment, a story occurred to me that I had forgotten, quite honestly, and never told a soul until that moment, which was when I found out I was a match. I went to somebody I needed to go to and have a conversation to say this is what I wanted to do. And he said something really interesting to me, which was, well, can you do that? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, isn't Kevin black? And I was like, jolted by that question. And then I thought about it, and it wasn't a malicious question. It was a question of just not understanding science. And I was, and I just said, well, I'll never forget my response. And my response was, well, yeah, our blood is the same, and that's all that matters. And as I'm telling Kevin this story, for the first time I've ever told that story, in the middle of COVID, in the aftermath of George Floyd, with the world around us and the riots in all these cities, it occurred to me, that's the message the world needs to hear, that our blood is the same and that's all that matters. The world needs to see an old white guy and a young black guy standing next to each other with their arm around each other saying, we're in this together. And that's when Getting the Game's born. And I kind of called Kevin back the next day. I was like, hey, I got an idea. Like, I want to.
So that's what happened.
That's what happened right there in that conversation. I called him the next day and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to go into the schools and tell our story. I want to help young people have better understanding and be more intentional around race. And Kevin, to his credit, and I'll let him tell his side of the story, of course, but Kevin's like, I'm in. I'll move to Winston-Salem. And he moved to Winston-Salem like 2 days later. And we started this thing.
Where were you at?
So my family moved to Florida. So during the pandemic, I was in Florida. And as soon as I got that call, I got off the phone and I was like, hey, I think Walt needs me in Winston.
This is
we're starting a nonprofit.
This was no joke.
Yeah.
This was not let's kick this around a while. This was let's do this.
Well, it made a lot of sense when we're talking about misunderstandings and having confidence in the room when there's multiple races and having to have that conversation. I grew up in the South, so I didn't get to have those conversations until I landed at Wake, and then I see so many misunderstandings, so many conversations that I wish I had had in high school, with different races, about different topics, about social issues that Getting the Game allows high school kids to discuss and create their opinions and create their feelings on different topics. I thought that made sense from point zero, and it was our blood is the same. I think that's true, and the world needs to hear that. So I was like, yes, and every time Coach brought something up that we were going to build into getting the game. I was like, yes, that makes so much sense. And then, it's just putting the action behind it. So I'm like, all right, hey guys, to my parents, I'm going to be in Winston on Friday, and I think it may have been Tuesday when we got the phone call.
Yeah.
So,
and Kevin came up with the name 2 days later, or next day maybe. He calls me, and he's got a sketch that he drew, with the two of us kind of walking off down the right field line, and underneath it he wrote "Get in the game," and that's Kevin's vision right there.
Game Changer is a student within Get in the Game who chooses a main topic to research about and how it impacts Greensboro.
Well, let's just start. What is Get in the Game?
Well, Get in the Game is a social action or social justice club that attracts students from all diverse backgrounds, Black, white, Latino, Middle Eastern, Asian, like anyone to come together to discuss social issues that they encounter in their everyday lives. Social issues.
So we found a need for Get in the Game.
We did,
yes,
especially at our high school.
And the top dog for Get in the Game is called Game Changer.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me about a Game Changer.
So a Game Changer is a student from all different high schools. We mainly focus in Greensboro, but they have reached out to other states. So it's like nationwide, where we talk about different social issues and how we can change it.
And it's real now. Those kids are like game changers. They're
running with it.
They're running with it. Yeah. So they went from, hey Kevin, hey, I got an idea. This thing is real. And I know you're proud of what they're game changers within Getting the Game. So it's not like when you guys are planning and building an organization such as this, because it's growing. Did you have each other over for popcorn? Hey, come over popcorn. Let's talk about what we're gonna do next week. You got a great staff. You got Amanda. You got Taylor. I did meet those ladies. Mm-hmm. You have such a board that's not only influential, board full of professionals, and the empathy that they have. I've done a little research. There's a lot of moving pictures in this thing. Talk to me about the game behind the name. Help us with hey, who's making this thing run? Because what I want to highlight is this is no joke. This Game Changer, this Getting the Game thing. So tell us about your supporting stuff, your board.
Yeah, so it starts with Amanda, and she lives at the center of kind of education technology and social entrepreneurship. So after I hung up with Kevin that first time, my next call was to Amanda.
And how did what's the relationship you and Amanda?
We've known each other 30 years. I was an assistant coach back at George Washington. Yeah. We worked in the equipment room there together. Really? And so a lot of late nights, me doing laundry and her doing homework. Yeah. And sometimes my homework. Whatever it takes. And so we've been friends for a really long time. And Amanda's gone on to do some really incredible things in her life. And she's always had a heart for helping others and making an impact. And so once this idea was born and we started talking about how do we reach people, we started talking about an NCAA course and getting this into every high school in the country. We started talking about helping train these teachers, so they can facilitate these conversations, providing safe spaces for kids to talk about things and have real conversations and be transparent with one another. Because that's the key to this whole thing is these conversations in safe spaces. These kids today, Kevin sees it every day, they are more aware and engaged in their communities and wanting to do something in their communities than ever before. But they need resources, they need information, they need opportunity, and they need to channel it in the right direction. And that's what Getting the Game is all about, is providing these safe spaces to have conversations, but also giving them the resources and the information they need to do something productive, to do something that makes a difference.
Nothing pleases me more to see a nonprofit with a vision and really hit the ground running. Little known, I went back to school myself, studying social services and human services, because the good Lord said, hey, feed my people. I want to understand what the problems are out there in the world. And one of the things that's fascinating me with my studies now is social sciences. And when I talk to your two game changers, I see the world as trying to solve social issues from the old people down.
Yep.
And I'm an old person. I'm over 60, so I'm in that group. It's got to be from kids up.
No doubt about
And that's what I love about this nonprofit. So from your perspective, you're in the schools. You're in the middle school?
Middle school, yes, sir.
You're right there. What are you seeing? And then tell them I want to come back to what you're seeing in athletics, in the colleges. But let's start with what are you seeing in the middle schools that really makes you want to grab hold of this getting the game, get this thing into every school possible.
So, I mean, originally I saw it facilitating for getting the game. The first year I was a facilitator, and I got to go to different middle schools in addition to high schools, and I got to see kids focus on, what goes on in their school, why, AP class doesn't have many black students, and why a student in an AP class may not feel comfortable, why certain students don't take AP classes, right? And completely understanding that if you feel like you're an other in a class, you're not going to go there, right? So seeing situations like that in our game with our game changers while I was facilitating led into the classroom where now I see, oh, this kid feels less than because he doesn't have the confidence as a black person to tell a white kid, hey, it's not okay to say that, right? So I get to see on the ground level where there's misunderstandings and, just a need for them to have that conversation without, a teacher telling them, hey, you can't talk about that in the classroom. Where getting the game fits in is you can talk about that, right? There's a scenario that's a social situation that's going on right now where you need to be able to say, hey, you can't say that and this is why, right? So in a classroom, I see it and I want to make the classroom my space, but the classroom is something that I'm borrowing, and getting the game is something that, we have fully owned and make sure that from the student standpoint that it's a fair and safe space where they can have those conversations and then take that in the world with some confidence that they can change some situation that they deem is important to them socially. And we've seen it from, clothing drives to focusing on homeless and the little thing that a high school kid can do to raise awareness for that. So we see all these different projects, and I believe that's just things that are in their mind that they don't get to express in even social studies, but obviously not math, science, and writing. And that's where getting the game kind of fits in.
Wow. Tom, what do you see?
Well, first of all, I gotta give a shout out to my brother here. Every time I'm around this guy, he has a mic drop moment. He just had another one where he talked about how the classroom he's borrowing, and the inference there is the concept of borrowing versus ownership. And what an incredible!
I picked up on what he's putting.
What an incredible line he just dropped on us right there,
Yeah.
and powerful. But I think there's two parts to it, David. I think part number one is we're in Page High School, and the principal at Page, Eric Nagley, is a rock star. And he told us, we sat down with a meeting with Eric, and he told us that after COVID, 900 of his students had no access to learn because they had no internet. They had no way to get them books. They got books to maybe 100 of them. So these kids went a year plus with like just a pause in their education. Nothing.
What a stunt, bro.
And how does that young person ever catch up? So part of this is about inequity and kids that don't have resources that other kids have. The other part of this is these kids today, and I see it at the college level, they're dealing with more anxiety and pressure than ever before because of social media, because of all the external influences that you and I never had to deal with. And they need a community. They need allies. And that's what Getting the Game. Getting the Game is really twofold. One, providing opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have to make a difference. Two, giving them a community of allies, of like-minded individuals who go out there together and do something great.
One of the beautiful things about sitting down with you guys, and I want to thank you so much, is to just look at you two. The world wouldn't have put you together in this nonprofit if it was up to the world. I want to highlight that. I know that.
Well, it's funny you say that because, and I've said this before, You know, when this story originally happened, not one media outlet talked about race. They didn't even mention it. They didn't mention it. Like, how is that even possible? Because that's what this country does with race. They sweep it under the rug and they pretend like it's not an issue. It's an issue every single day. It's been an issue for 100 years, 200 years. And it's not going to be not an issue until we have these conversations and we take action and we be intentional. It's not enough to do nothing. You have to be anti-racist. You have to be proactive. You have to use your voice.
You know, I have my two grandkids. Their mother's Asian and Korean, and I want them to grow up in a world that sees them for their brilliance. Period. That makes sense, doesn't it?
100%.
So this thing drew me to a lot of feelings. When I got to thinking of Amanda. Said, yeah, Tom, they got this nonprofit called Get the Game. I said, let me look at this thing. Wow, all I want to do with his space now is to magnify and highlight it, spotlight it all across North Carolina, and use every resource that I have to push this thing forward and to help. So I'm going to finish the interview with a couple questions. I know you guys are busy, but as we leave this session, if you could look in the camera and say, hey, this is what I really feel. This is what we really need. And this is how you can really help. We'll start with Coach.
Well, again, two parts to that answer. One, how can you help get in the game doing what you're doing, amplifying our message, you know, being God's mouthpiece like you are. And thank you for that, David, because again, most people sit on the sidelines. You got off the sidelines and got into the game, to steal Kevin's term. But so first things first is amplify our message. There's lots of ways to help, whether it's you have a connection to help us get into a school that we're not in, you know, whether you can connect us to a funder. Obviously, that's clearly important. Whether you're just spreading our message on social media, you know, you can do something. But the second part to it is do something in your own life to make a difference. It doesn't have to be get in the game, but take action to make your community better. You know, later today, we're honoring one of our local game changers here as the scholarship winner. We give a scholarship away every year to a college. Young man's going to North Carolina A&T, Trent.
And we have the Walter Family Scholarship, in which both Ann and Ralph Walter have generously donated $5,000 to this award winner. That's a lot of money. Without further ado, we have the award recipient for this year. Trent, come on down.
Trent. As we went through this process of determining, and there were a lot of really great candidates, and you guys, game changers, you're crushing it. And facilitators, thank you for creating the spaces and the opportunity, the information that these young people need to make a difference. But Trent, as we read through your recommendations that you received from the school, they talked about your growth mindset, your curiosity. They talked about your enthusiasm and your energy. And then as you started to talk about what you wanted to do in terms of clean water and nutrition, the things that these communities need, things that many of us take for granted that are such big needs in our communities, it became apparent to us that you were the obvious choice for the Walter Family Scholarship. We had a lot of great candidates that were really close, by the way, people in this room. But the other thing I loved about Trent's application and what he's going to go on to do, he's a talented young man. His extracurricular activities are as long as my arm, and his grades are off the chart. And clearly he makes the room better, which is a big deal for me. But he decided that he could have went anywhere in the country to go to school. He decided to stay right here at North Carolina A&T so he can make a difference in his community. Trent Benton, give it up.
And in addition to that, speaking of home, somebody in my ear said I should bring up his mom, who is here, to accept this award with him.
Come on, Mom. Yeah, we're going to get in. Let's bring it in close for a picture. KJ, slide over a little bit. Tierney, come on in here. And this young man, intentionally, he could have went anywhere in the country to school, but he's going to North Carolina A&T because he wants to make a difference right here in his hometown. And I just kudos to that young man for wanting to make a difference and for grabbing the bull by the horns.
KJ?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak toward some of the kids that I've facilitated in that age group. You got to get involved, right? Just the general awareness is where we attack that anxiety. Being aware of the world around you, being willing to have those conversations, and being willing to get in the game and turn those conversations into something, right? So I would talk to the high school kid that's wondering if getting the game is a program for them. Check it out, right? Get engaged. It is something that's going to get you involved in a conversation that you'll have the rest of your life, right? As long as you're living in America and at this point, any country in the world, you're going to have a social issue and you're going to have an issue about race that can be potentially solved through a conversation. And if you've had that, if you've had experience doing that, right, you'll feel a lot more comfortable in your life. Yeah. So get in the game, get active.
I'm going to say something I hadn't even planned on saying. Sure. My grandkids, the father's African American, the mother's Caucasian, their grandmother's Caucasian. When I walked here today, we're filming this at the Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro, and the lady said, "Oh, it's so great. This people just need to know about history." What do you say to the white guy, the white lady, the white child, who's saying, "Well, this is another African American endeavor"? It's not. It's not. I need you to speak to that before we finish. What do you say to that?
I would reiterate.
It's so much bigger than that, Kevin.
It's a conversation. It's a discussion that you're gonna have, and if you think you're not gonna have it, you've already had that discussion and you missed it, right? You missed the point of, somebody said something to you that went over your head because you don't know that culture, right? You don't know that they were reaching out to you to try to maybe share a little bit of who they were to you. That's most of the time when I make good friends, it's through having a conversation that felt a little uneasy to start, and it becomes, okay, now I feel like I actually know you. Now I'm not walking on eggshells. Now I can ask questions. Now we can become true friends. We can, like Coach said, build a community behind something that's more real than, we're on the same team. We're not only on the same team, I understand that your culture is different than mine. Your family's different than mine. And those are things we can either have in common or we can appreciate the differences.
One of the most powerful moments in this journey for me has been Dr. Herman Urey, who's on our board of trustees at Wake Forest. And he's a rock star professor, biology professor, black gentleman who's seen it all. And, and he's been teaching at Wake Forest for 40 years. So he's kind of been through it. And I told him what we wanted to do, what Kevin and I wanted to do. And he told me, he said, Tom, he said, from the time a young black man can think for himself, he understands that he needs to be super intentional in every interaction he has with a white person. His body language, facial expressions, the words he chooses, how he dresses. And again, he might choose to ignore those things, but he understands that he has a decision to make. And he goes, and until white people understand that they have to have that same level of intentionality and that they have that same decision to make in those interactions, again, whether it's with a black man or an Asian woman or somebody who's in the LGBTQ community, whatever, it's all the same, right? We're coming from different spaces and we have to be respectful of that. And He goes, until they have that same level of intentionality, he goes, we won't get there. And he goes, and we can't get there unless we get there together. And I was blown away by that sentiment. And then as we got through this, and I hear stories from Kevin and Donnie Sellers, who was one of our executive directors, and they talk about it. And when you ask them questions like, what do you want to see? And Donnie Sellers is like, you know what I want? I want to walk down the street and a white woman's coming my way and she doesn't clutch her purse a little tighter, or she doesn't walk to the other side of the street or pull her kid closer. That's what I want. And when you hear things like that, like as a white man who's come from some privilege, who has no concept of those things, it's like, God bless, I gotta get involved here.
And I tell you what, I cannot think of two people who are carrying God's water as well as you guys in this area, this arena, in His space. We do everything we can to identify and highlight exactly what you're doing and help you in any way we can. Tom Walter, JJ, Eddie Jordan, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.